so much for having me here this morning. I'm very honored to be here. I was told that the theme of the day was about empowerment, so I'm going to focus my emotional state from being overwhelmed to feeling empowered to speak to you this morning, and I certainly hope that at the end of my talk you feel they empowered the right person. Can I give you that? Thanks so much. There's a lot of stuff on this podium. Okay, so I've been asked to tell my story, what has inspired me to do what I do. What's interesting is that this event is about getting inspiration from us as speakers for you, and what's inspired me so much are the stories and experiences of single moms whose, I guess, sphere of influence, for lack of a better term, may only be felt by a very small circle, yet will probably have a much more profound effect on those people they touch. So I'll start by giving you a little background. I'm the eldest of 4 kids, which my parents had in a 5-year time span, and my family all live in Toronto, where I'm from. I've been married to my husband for 14 and a half years. We met in Toronto at my younger sister's wedding. My father introduced me as his spinster elder daughter. My would-be husband seemed to like spinsters, and I ended up moving out to Vancouver to be with him. We have 2 children now, a 12-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son. I think when I look back at what I've done so far in my life, I can honestly say there were probably 3 key times in my past that inspired me to the point of empowerment. The first was backpacking for 8 months in a foreign part of the world. The second would be the death of my grandmother, and the third was becoming a mother. After graduating from university, and before I really got my career in advertising underway, I worked hard and saved enough money and traveled for 8 months to Southeast Asia and the Middle East. Needless to say, it was a very eye-opening experience. I saw some of the most beautiful things in the world, like the Taj Mahal, mountains in Nepal, pyramids, and met some very interesting people. But it also helped me see the world a lot differently. It was a trip that exposed me to poverty, to upset, uncertainty, and different cultures that made me realize how unbelievably lucky I was to live in Canada. And it was then that I felt empowered to do something to try to help others less fortunate than myself. While I was away, my grandmother died of breast cancer. No one knew she had it, no one knew how long she had had it, and no one knew that she had been knowingly ignoring a serious health problem that would take her life. She died from neglecting her own health. She was scared, embarrassed, and she felt alone. Unfortunately, this was not my first experience with breast cancer. When I was in high school, my best friend's mother was diagnosed. At that time, and we're talking the mid-'80s, no one spoke about breast cancer. No one talked about early detection, self-examination, mammography, buying items for a cure, all that stuff. And I remember it being a very stressful thing for my girlfriend. But what was so upsetting was the secrecy of it all. Don't tell anyone when her mother got diagnosed. Don't say anything to my mom. She would hate it if anybody knew. This was a stress that her family had decided to handle internally, so to speak. I was terrified of getting breast cancer when I was younger. I think what I found so distressing from my exposure to this disease was the sheer isolation that people seemed to feel. It was then that I was empowered to do something to try to help others less fortunate than myself. At the time, breast cancer was affecting 1 in 10 women, but many more women were dying from the disease than they are today. One day when I was at work at a sports marketing firm, I read an article about an event in the United States called Race for the Cure. It was a women's-only run that was raised money for the Susan G. Komen Foundation in the United States. The article inspired me and was the impetus for me starting Run for the Cure. I wanted the Canadian event to be different, however. I didn't believe breast cancer was just a women's issue. To me, it affected families, husbands, parents, children, friends. So I wanted the event in Canada to be something that everybody could take part in. As well, I didn't want it to be a competitive run like it was in the US that excluded people who might not be fit enough to participate because of their athletic ability. So in 1992, we, and by we I mean friends, coworkers, and myself, launched the first ever Run for the Cure. I asked a coworker to help design a brochure. I asked a client to help design the race course and set up the start-finish line. I asked friends to volunteer. And after literally standing at the finish line of every sporting event that summer, handing out race brochures and asking a lot of people I knew for favors, we were ready to stage our first event. My client, who organized competitive runs, told us to expect about 250 people for our first year. That year, 1,500 people showed up. The next year, we moved the event, and that was in a park in Toronto. The next year we moved to the streets and we shut down major roads. We added sponsors, corporate teams, signs that people could wear if they were running in memory of or in honor of someone they loved. In our second year, 5,000 people showed up, and we knew we had something worth expanding. That year, I had a friend shoot a video, and we used the video to expand the event across the country. We traveled from east to west in our third year, and in 1994, we had 7 run sites, and over 25,000 people participated. Now, I was doing all of this work while working a full-time job, but that's what I chose to do in my spare time when I was still single. And to be clear, when we started the event, we didn't set out to create a massive national fundraising vehicle that would put breast cancer on the radar of every person in the country and raise millions for the disease. We started by trying to do something that excluded no one, that offered a means of support, of community, and of hope. So now it came the time for me to stop running this event off the side of my desk and invest more time in my career. So I handed off the run to a girlfriend who'd been with me since the very beginning and spent the next 4 years climbing the corporate ladder, so to speak. It was about that time that I met my husband, and because he was from Vancouver and had a business here, I moved here in 1999, and we were married soon after. When I moved to Vancouver, I was lucky enough to get a fairly big job at BC Hydro. I worked downtown at the office on Dunsmuir Street and would sometimes go to my husband's office that was at Princess and Alexander, giving me a regular view of what was going on in the downtown east side of Vancouver. I was shocked at what I saw. It was somewhat of a chaotic jungle down there. I don't think I need to describe to you any of the images or what's going on in certain parts of our city. It's incredibly sad. But I will never forget driving along Hastings Street one day and seeing a mom walking with a baby in a stroller and a toddler holding her hand. And I thought, oh my God, this is not a place for a child to be walking and being exposed to these things. This was an image that stuck in my mind from that moment onwards. Now, BC Hydro was not really where I saw my future. And when I was pregnant with my second child, the company went through a massive restructuring, and I decided to retire from the industry of electricity and find out what my next move would be. Now, we were fortunate enough to have a nanny to help me, which was amazing because all of my family and most of my friends were back in Toronto, and my husband traveled a lot for work. I couldn't believe how hard a job it was to be a mother. I couldn't believe how tired I was, how much I questioned myself, how demanding my new clients were, how little I knew about what I was doing on a daily basis, and how many resources it required to get through a day and feel like you'd only done an okay job. I think what really motivated me to do something was when I got sick with the flu. It was the weekend, my husband was away, and I was so sick I could not get out of bed. I thought to myself at that point in time, how is this supposed to work? How do people do this when they are alone, with no support system, no money or resources to help with their kids? And I thought back to that image of the woman alone with her 2 children trying to survive in the downtown east side of the city. Something inside me just felt the need to try and do something to help women who are out there trying to do it with nothing. I was empowered to do something to try to help others less fortunate than myself. Now, that can be a very daunting proposition. I started by getting the facts. What was really going on in both our city and our province? Well, these 3 stats really stood out for me. The first is that 49.8% of single mothers and their children live in poverty in British Columbia. That's essentially 1 out of every 2 mothers, single mothers. BC's single mother poverty rate is the 2nd highest in the country, and that there are 153,000 children in British Columbia in poverty, and 55,000 of them live in lone mother-led families. These numbers are staggering. And it's important to note that while the statistics are quoting poverty in children, it's the parents who are poor. These children are at a disadvantage from an early age, and the goal for me, and why we started Cause We Care, is to figure out how to best help single mothers and to assist the process towards long-term change. Now, how do you start something when you're empowered to do something? Well, after seeing a sign asking for volunteers, in December of 2006, I sent out an email to a group of women and asked them to spread their word and let me know if they were interested in helping volunteer a couple of weeks before Christmas. 50 of us showed up, and we served lunch to 600 women and children at the Downtown Eastside Women's Center's Christmas lunch. From there, I had more women want to do something to help these families. We got connected with the YWCA and found ways to support the women that they had relationships with. These were single mothers that were trying to make a better lives for themselves and for their children. They had already taken the terrifying first step to leave an abusive relationship or to move to a city where they would find more support, or to get help for a trauma that had haunted them from their past. These were the women we wanted to help. And so a group of us got together and formed an informal committee. I hosted evenings at my home, had women who had turned their lives around speak, and ended up having women want to give more than just their time. They wanted to help fund bus passes and food cards. As time went on, we grew in numbers. As women and mothers, we wanted to help other single mothers in need. We rolled up our sleeves and went to work. We gathered and distributed supplies, built relationships with those working on the front lines, so to speak. And finally, we realized that we needed to establish a more formal entity. And with that in mind, we met with a lawyer, submitted a very lengthy application, and in February of 2010, the Cause We Care Foundation became a legal public foundation. Our mission is to support resources and programs that assist marginalized single mothers and their children in our community. In order to better communicate what we do and who we are, 2 years ago we produced a video that we have used for the past couple of years to inform, inspire, and encourage support. Christine, can you play that video now?
Well, I come second, of course, because I have to provide for him, but then also have him have an enjoyable childhood, because I just don't want him to be living in poverty where he doesn't get anything and doesn't get to see anything in life. So lots of times what I want, or what I want for myself, comes after he has everything. And then if I have enough left over, then I can think of doing something for myself.
I didn't have anything to give my daughter for her birthday this one time, and it was really shocking because when we lived in Alberta, we weren't going through a financial hardship as much. So her other previous birthdays were always done up proper, you know. And this one year I had nothing. I barely even had a can of beans in the cupboards.
It's very, very difficult for me as a mom, working outside and inside also. And I have to deal with 2 teenager boys in different ways. And I give up a lot of things for myself to being a mom. And not any mom is a good mom. I try my best. Until now, my kids is good, but I don't know about tomorrow. No one is guaranteed about tomorrow.
Cause We Care started out of a need and want to make a difference, to help single mothers help themselves and give their families what we all want for our children, a bright and healthy future.
It's not about the stuff they give in. Even as a card, it means a lot for us, especially for me. Especially for me, it means a lot.
Thank you. Now that video is a couple of years old, but the message is still very relevant. I think that what resonates with me and why I have so much empathy for single mothers is the fragility of it all. There are single mothers living above the poverty line, and there are those that live below it. And for many, that line is a very fragile one. The other day, we were meeting with a newly formed group called the Single Mothers Alliance of BC, and that was what seemed so apparent. One minute, you're married with a couple of young children, leaving you unable to work, and the next minute, your husband could either leave you, abuse you, or abandon you. You have no income, you have no savings, you have young children, and in order for you to work, it requires childcare, which you can't afford, no money to pay your rent, possibly no family or support network in the city, and the next thing you know, you're couch surfing with your children or going to a shelter with limited belongings and trying to make it all work. Cause We Care now works with over 19 frontline organizations, subsidized housing facilities, and inner-city schools. We host what has become the largest food hamper drive at Christmas. We honor mothers at Mother's Day with hampers. We are in the midst of distributing 350 backpacks filled with new school supplies for elementary and high school children, thanks to the generosity and the families at Crofton House School. We fund the after-school program at Thunderbird Elementary, which we will be expanding this year. And finally, one of our largest endeavors is that we are the single largest donor to support the construction of what will be called the YWCA Cause We Care House, a subsidized housing facility for 21 single mother families that will be built on top of a brand new Vancouver Public Library in Strathcona District, scheduled to open in January 2016. I remember a few years back when I started down the road of investing my energy in this particular cause, and I was in Toronto talking to my dad. I was describing to him the problem, painting him a picture of what it would be like to be a single mother, living alone with one or more children with nothing, and wondering if I would have enough money to feed myself and my children, or I would go hungry that night. My father looked at me and said, "Don't you think this is a massive problem, that it's too big for you to tackle, that you can't really ever change this thing? How can you really make a dent or a difference in the state of things?" I paused and said, "Why is doing something not enough? Why is helping only a few not worth trying? Why is it okay to just allow status quo remain status quo? As Mother Teresa said, if you can't feed 100 people, then feed just one." There's one thing I always try to tell my children, and it's something I've felt since I got home from my travels in 1990, and the way in which I choose to live my life, and it is this. Always try to make your life mean something. If you can, try to make it more than just looking after yourself, your children, and your own family. Believe me, I know that managing our own families is time-consuming enough, but there's always time to do something for others. I'm blessed to be able to invest my time in helping others, and I have the support from my husband and my friends and my children, and I feel very fortunate that I have that kind of time to give. But I think what's important to remember when talking about empowerment and giving back and philanthropy is that different things inspire you at different times in your life. Listen to your heart. Never believe how little you feel your contribution maybe won't make a difference. It will, and it does. I'll leave you with this quote, and I love quotes. And if you visit our website, you'll see that for yourself. But this one I saw recently, and it's by Danny Thomas. Yes, Danny Thomas, the entertainer, the father of Marlo Thomas, Free to Be You and Me, Marlo Thomas, and it's this. All of us are born for a reason, but all of us don't discover why. Success in life has nothing to do with what you gain in life or accomplish for yourself. It's what you do for others. Thank you very much for having me here this morning. It's been an honor speaking to you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.